So, hello and welcome to the first of these lives for 2024. For those of you who haven't joined one of these before, it's basically something I try to do every month where we're just talking to Ukrainian teachers of English to find out how they're getting on, how they're coping with the ongoing situation, how the war has affected their teaching, and to hear a little bit more about the context and the situation, and to give voice to people in a very difficult situation that's going on at the moment. Today I'm going to be joined by Tanya, and I can see that she's asking to join. So let me just add her and we'll get started. My cup of tea here as well. I'm hoping that means, let's see what happens. Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. Hi. Here. Can you see and hear me clearly?
I can hear you. I can see you. All good.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me here. Thank you for having me here.
Giving up a bit of time to join us. It's a question I dread asking people at the moment, but how are you and how are your loved ones?
Thank you. I'm fine. We are safe. We are at home. We are in Kyiv. So yeah, no air raid siren right now. Quite safe. Sitting near the window. So, yes, we're fine. Thank you.
How's Kyiv been the last few days? Because there was a period a week or so ago.
Yeah. We had some bombings recently, and some of them were really quite close to where I live. Well, yeah, but we've had worse. So the thing is, maybe it's a bad thing to say, but you kind of get used to them, unless they're, of course, as bad as in closer to the frontline cities. But Kyiv seems a little bit more protected. Well, of course, they do have the misses, and sometimes the I don't know, the pieces of the missiles shot damage the flats and the buildings. So yeah, unless it's that case.
Problems, is that right? That like when the missiles are hit by anti-missile launchers or rockets or whatever, you get the kind of metal debris spraying on everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So this is also causing a lot of destruction too. So unless the thing is, some of the missiles, I'm not a military person to be able to explain that properly, but as far as I understand, some types of missiles cannot be hit, far away from their aim, so they can be caught at certain ranges of height. So this is the only thing our air defense can do, but they are gods. So.
And you've been managing to sleep okay and teach okay?
The thing is, I have two kids, and at the beginning of the big invasion, I was packed about a month before the invasion actually happened, because we learned the history and we kind of knew it would be coming. It's just we didn't know the dates. First, there were rumors, and on the news, everybody kept saying that the 16th. And then, obviously, it happened when it happened. So I was packed, but I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to run away. And it's my home, So the first 4 or 5 days and nights we spent at the bomb shelter. And then we tried to escape. And when we escaped, we'd spent 9 or 10 months living abroad. First, it was Portugal. My husband obviously stayed here. He protected Kyiv and all. So it was out of discussion. I didn't even ask him because I knew who I'd married. I just looked into his eyes, and I knew that it would be me with the girls traveling. So we'd spent first 3 months in Portugal at our friend's place, and then for another 6 months, we moved to Vilnius, to the capital of Lithuania. And I must say that I had more sleepless nights there than when we came back to Kyiv. I don't know, emotionally, it's so much more difficult to be abroad, to be far away from the epicenter of the events. I would be reading the news on different channels. Every time there would be an air alarm, I would wake up to check. I would see whether my relatives are online or not. I would need to text them, "Are you okay or not?" And I understand that probably was driving them nuts as well. Like, "Oh, I'm sleeping. I'm trying to sleep here." Yeah. So it's mentally, it's somehow easier here because you're in the middle of it. and you know what you have to do in case something happens. And then probably at some point you get so tired of being afraid that you think, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you know, like, you know, come what may. If it, I
Because one of my students, Tetiana, I don't know if she's watching or not. I haven't seen her pop up yet, but she's from Kharkiv, and
Mhm.
she's been in Kharkiv like the whole of the last 2 years, and she's lived through it all. And she became very stoical and very kind of, it's fine, we'll be okay. And then now she's been offered a sponsor in Coventry, and she's actually in the
Mhm.
UK at the moment. And we were chatting last week in class, and she said that the same thing you said, which is it's actually worse for her being in Coventry than it is being in Kharkiv, because if she was there, she said, like, if she heard there was a bomb in the main street or whatever, she'd go out with everyone else and they'd help tidy up the rubbish. And, you know, you could feel more useful,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
because you immediately participate in the kind of active volunteering work that was needed in the area. And now all she can do is to basically absorb the news passively and, you know, around people who maybe don't understand quite what you're going through and what emotions you're going through, and even if they're trying to be supportive. So I totally get how it can actually be harder when you're away from the epicenter in a way.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I also have a colleague of mine, Valeria, maybe she's watching us. She's from Kharkiv as well, and she's been there all the time, and she comes and joins my speaking club. So I admire these people, her in particular, and these people, because she's always on time. She's always in great mood, and you know, it's so inspiring, and it then gives me more strength, because then I think, who am I to complain, you know? So yeah, it's amazing. Of course, you know, the closer you are to the front line, the probably you do need to take some time off this stress, because it's non-stop. It's really non-stop. So your mind, your subconscious really needs to get away from time to time. That's why I remember when she traveled to Kiev, she said, oh guys, it's like heaven here compared to us. You know, so I cannot complain, really. It does feel scary. It does sound scary when every time we have it. And the thing is, well, maybe it's the wrong thing to say and to do, but we stopped going to the shelter all the time. I have kids, and you know, they also need to sleep, and I understand that even if I'm not asleep, you know, they need some rest. So if I'm going to be dragging them every time, so what I do is I close the curtains. They're quite heavy. We have our windows taped up. Yeah, and I hope for the curtains because statistically the biggest amount of injuries is from the broken glass. Sometimes when it's too loud, because we have like, you know, an object quite close to us, if it's too loud, then I try to cover up the body of my baby with my body when she is asleep. I know it's silly, but you know, if it helps me calm down.
And I think that's right what you just said, yeah, that the biggest casualty rates in a lot of places are from bomb blasts going off and blowing out the windows, and when the windows are blown out, the glass actually flies inside.
Yeah,
if you're not careful, people can get like a shard of
yeah,
glass in the neck.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I hope this is going to protect us. Well, I hope it's not going to happen. I hope we're going to become stronger and stronger and have less and less bombings.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is life so far.
And just to kind of rewind your story a little bit, are you from Kiev originally?
Originally, I'm from Western Ukraine, a city called Lutsk. It's like 60 kilometers away from Polish border and 120 from Lviv, where I believe you've been to.
Over the
Um,
place I've
yeah,
been in.
yeah, yes. So I grew up,
Well,
yeah. So I spent 19 years there, and then I went to study and live
oh,
in
really?
London for 4 years. Yes, yes. um, I had a chance to go as an exchange student to the USA, to the States. My dad was saying, "Oh, are you gonna go? Are you gonna go?" I said, "No, I'm into the UK." I really I've always enjoyed England in particular, and the accent and everything. So then I went to study over there. I've spent 4 years there, both studying and working, gaining my experience. But I never had an intention to stay there for good. And then I came back and started living in Kiev straight away, and it
Where
was
were you,
like.
Anya? Can you remember?
Uh,
Where were
sorry?
London? Where were you
Oh,
living?
of course, I can remember the first year and a half. It was Holland Park Avenue. Yes, there is an association of Ukrainians in Great Britain over there, and there is a hostel for students
Down there and things, yeah.
Yeah, very posh area, really nice. I think I saw Brian
Yeah.
May one day just passing by. Yeah, I was like, you know, my favorite band. And then I lived like in the triangle between Holborn, Chancery Lane, and Tottenham Court Road. So also, you know, a really nice area. Yeah, I lived with a friend, so it wasn't anything, you know. We shared a tiny flat. We shared a tiny social flat she was living in. All our friends were mocking us that we live in an airspace shuttle or something. It was really tiny. We almost touched the ceilings with our heads. But the central place, everything was really close. So yeah, I was studying there. I did my advanced, then proficiency certificates. Then I opted for business English, and then I tried CIMA, Chartered Institute for Management Accountants. And once I realized that, well, I knew again that maths isn't for me, I decided to go back to Ukraine. And I moved to Kyiv straight away. And that was actually exactly 20 years ago. I celebrated my 20th year in Kyiv, like on the 15th of January. All of my friends were like, you know, saying, Tanya, are you stupid? Why did you go back? Oh, you could have stayed there. You could have found somebody over there for yourself. I said, like, whoa, this wasn't my intention. You know, I wanted to gain experience, to see the world, to see how things can be done, and then go back home and apply the best practices. So this was really something, you know, that I wanted to bring the better stuff to my home.
Were you already teaching when you went back to Kiev, or did you become a teacher later?
The thing is, probably, I think, yes. Well, I was teaching also when I was still living in London, and then I taught a little bit when I went back to Ukraine. But I also started a job at the bank as a translator and interpreter. I think at that time I was so fed up with you know, dealing with the language, actually, you know, learning and teaching, that I needed something different. And I'm really grateful for having that kind of experience too, because this really puts me, you know, translating banking documents, legal, finance, banking terminology. I'm telling you, this is something I would never have gained while just teaching and trying to get this kind of terminology from, I don't know, the books or theoretical materials. It's practical. Then I spent another 9 years working as a front office in sales, payments and cash management. So dealing with existing customers, servicing, including the locals and the foreign customers, negotiations, all kinds of meetings, opening accounts, dealing with the KYC procedures, well, loads of things.
And were you English at that point in your job as well?
Yes, obviously. So it's practical usage of business English and actually knowing the local legislation, learning how the companies from their own businesses work and what kind of service they need. Is, you know, variety of things that are really helping me right now in my business English teaching, because it's a unique combination, not just of theoretical, you know, material, not of just the methodology of an English teacher, but also the practical experience. So
I remember now the first time I started teaching business English and finance English, it was a huge shock to the system, because it's like, you know, I grew up being into music and books, right? I was a kind of failed musician and an English literature, and then suddenly you're teaching like business people and finance people and banking people, and I had no idea about their world or about the discourse and the lexis and the, you know, what was normal for people to know at intermediate level and what wasn't. And then I'd read things and it's like, yeah, I've read the definition of that in the dictionary in English, still have no idea what that means. And a lot of me was quite a steep learning curve as a native speaker. It was just a kind of alien world and alien lingo, and trying to work out what do you guys actually need to do your job better from me, you know. And mercifully, a lot of it wasn't actually the technical stuff, because they knew all the technical stuff already.
Yes, this is actually where pronunciation comes in as well, because a lot of people who come to me for business English, they already know their terminology, they know the stuff they're talking about, but they don't know how to either say it properly, or they don't understand how to use this in small talk.
Yeah.
They're afraid of speaking. So it's again something I'm trying to help them with, to break this speaking barrier. I clearly remember mine. I remember exactly when it happened that the first month of me living in London, I clearly remember these moments when I was queuing in a corner shop, building a sentence in my head and trying to remember to put the grammatical form, to put the words in the correct order. How do I pronounce this? And then, remember this joke, like, I would like to order a sandwich, then I'm a sandwich. So something like this. And I remember this, I understand them. And then 1 month, boop, I had it. The scare, I wasn't scared anymore. It was gone. So I really understand that you have to be immersed into the language. I've known
that the one thing is really interesting, because when my wife first came to the UK, she's originally from Indonesia. The first month she was here, she was really quiet, and I kind of remember thinking, like, you weren't this quiet before. Like, what's going on? And later she said that when she looked back on it, the only way she could understand that quietness was she was just kind of absorbing everything and tuning her ear in. And she said, like, the way that I spoke when we met when we were in Indonesia was very different to the way I was speaking with friends of mine when I was in London.
Yeah.
And it took quite a long time just to kind of tune her ear into, the way that normal people speak here on a day-to-day basis. And I think a month is kind of bare sort of ear tuning period,
Exactly. And it's not only about you speaking, it's also about listening, actually getting what people are saying. Yeah, true. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've known people who lived in London for 10 years and more, and who could barely speak 2-3 sentences together, seriously. And that was because I knew exactly that they were working with, or keeping the company with, only either their own nationality people, or with someone close, so that they could speak whichever language but not English. So
of Brits who've lived in Kiev for 10 years and almost know Ukrainian or Russian, but just know basic survival stuff, and the rest of English, I'm sure every country got those people as well.
I guess so. It really depends on what you want to achieve. Yeah, if you don't want to struggle too much, then okay. Whoever wants to understand me will find his or her way.
The most depressing thing for me is when you find out they're actually English teachers. And wait a minute, you've been in a country 5 years and you haven't learned their language, but you're telling them to learn yours. And you maybe see a problem with this.
Yeah.
So for you, how did you first get into English? I mean, what was your kind of initial motivation, or what led you to kind of go above and beyond where most people end up with their English, which is sort of, B1 basically?
You mentioned the magical word music. I think that's where it kicks in, because I'm into music as well. I have musical education. I've graduated from a musical school, and I've always had a good ear for languages in general. So whenever I was listening, and like, I've lived in the Soviet Union for 12 years. So as you can imagine, we didn't have much of foreign music then when I was a baby, but then it started appearing everywhere. And this was mainly the music I was listening to. I really enjoyed trying to figure out the words and everything. And then during the school, we noticed that I'm good at languages. And when you are 16 or 17, like my eldest daughter right now, you don't know what you really want to become. And then we were sitting with my parents thinking, oh, which faculty I should choose, what should I go to? Okay, like, you're good at languages, maybe you should go for, the foreign languages department, which in the Soviet times, it was a really posh department, because it was a place where an ordinary person couldn't just get, into that easily, because it is believed that they were preparing the spies and the translators or interpreters. It wasn't just an ordinary person. It was meant to be someone who would be doing the job for the party and so on. So in my times, it wasn't already a department like that, but it was still considered very posh and stuff, and really difficult to enter into, but because I was a golden medalist at the university, at the school. I thought that, okay, like if I'm good at languages, why don't I try? I did, and I remember exactly 6 months of the first year at the university passed, and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. We started studying English like from scratch, German and
Wow.
Latin. And I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. Seriously, it was, and I'm really grateful that I had this feeling, this sensation, because I know people who are in their 40s, 50s, and they still haven't figured out what they want to do in their life. So they're still searching for themselves. And
What I do when I grow up, you know.
yeah, like, and you so that's how I happened to be over there. Yeah, that's how I ended up being with the languages. Of course, I was really good at German during my third year at the university, but then I lost it because I haven't had practice. I joke that if I have a glass of wine, then my German becomes better.
Three glasses of wine, it gets worse.
Yeah. And then I speak it with English accent. What's also funny, yeah. And the thing is, the teacher who had been preparing me to enter the university, she was a phonetician. And then we had a lot of phonetical studies during the university. We had a lot of theoretical and practical phonetics. So maybe this is another reason why I'm dealing with English pronunciation right now as well, because I kind of I fell in love with all this stuff. So I really like, to help people hear better and learn to pronounce things better. I know it's not really popular to say now, things like improve your accent or correct your accent, because people are allowed to speak with a different accent as long as they are understandable, as long as the communicative aim of knowing another language is what? Understanding each other. So end of story. As long as your speech is clear enough, what's the point?
I had a conversation the other day with a teacher friend. I think it was something Laura Patsko said a few years ago in a talk she did, came up, where she said sometimes the teacher isn't necessarily, particularly in multilingual classes, the teacher isn't necessarily the best judge of what's intelligible. I mean, it's often, do the other students from a language group that you're talking to understand you? If so, you're basically okay. Okay.
Exactly.
And sometimes as teachers, kind of be like, either you kind of overcorrect because that's what you've been trained to do,
Yeah.
actually understand everything because you're used to hearing all kinds of different accents, and it's like, I know no one else can understand this guy, but don't worry, he's fine, I understand him. And the real problem is, can the Brazilian guy talk to the Thai woman, or can the Greek woman talk to the Saudi guy, or whatever? And if they're okay together, then probably there's no problem between them. It's that idea of pronunciation and intelligibility being a two-way street, actually, and it all depends on where you're starting from and what you're used to.
Yeah, exactly. So my idea is that I don't have to persuade people to have their accent corrected or pronunciation perfected, especially as they used to always say, like, you must speak as a native speaker. But what kind of a native speaker, from what part of earth? Yeah, and so on. So I really love the idea that it's a person's choice, and whatever aim or goals he or she comes to me, I help achieving those goals. If it's just to improve some bits and pieces, that's okay. But as long as the person is, that there is a clarity of the speech so that others can communicate and understand you. So that's the ultimate goal.
I was just thinking as well what you said about the old days where the language training was often tied into spy work and that kind of thing. Because there's a famous film, an English film, called How Went the Day? And it's set during World War II. And it's about a couple of German spies who've infiltrated this little village up in Norfolk on the coast. And they kind of say they're refugees from another part of the country. They're internally displaced people. And they're kind of absorbing information and feeding stuff back to secret command. And it's all going really well until at one point, one of the guys sees his neighbors and said, "Hey, John, how went the day?" John stops and went, "What did you say?" And this one little slip gives you and up until that point, he'd managed to pass himself off as a Brit. And, you make one slip and people kind of go, wait a minute. But I was also thinking just about, and I noticed it around Brexit, and obviously it hasn't gone away since then, the Russian-speaking people on social media who speak amazing English, but who basically create sock puppet accounts or fake accounts, pretend to be British. And usually what gives them away is like, wait a minute, you're from Sheffield. People from Sheffield don't say things like this. People don't speak like this. And often when you kind of call it out, sometimes the accounts would disappear. Sometimes I'd end up having these conversations with people saying, look, you've obviously learned a really impressive amount of English. Have you thought about using it for a better purpose than working for the St. Petersburg troll factories? You know, have you thought about maybe emigrating? You know, you could go to another country and use your English skills for some other purpose from interfering in our bloody democracy. Thank you very much. You know, and it does really sadden me. I'm sure it also sometimes works in reverse, but it really saddens me when I see people who've learned great English and what they do with it is chat shit on the internet to support corrupt governments. It's like, you know, is that the best you can think of to do with your skill?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. When we had it all started back in 2014, I remember I had like a very brief discussion about this with an old friend of mine. She was from my hometown, but then she got married into a Russian guy and had spent around 10 years in Moscow. So she got a passport. Her baby was born there, who is considered to be Russian because of the place where he was born. And then she'd moved out, she got divorced, she'd moved out of there, and she married a German guy. So she now, for the time being, it's like almost 20 years that she's been living in Germany, I think. And we were exchanging some things, some thoughts on that. And I remember she asked me, Tanya, could you stop sending me like all the pictures about the war, about Putin? Like, why do you think you're going to convince me, or somebody else is going to be convinced that this is wrong, or think nastily about Putin, just because you send a picture of this kind? Like, if a girl is sitting somewhere in Siberia, she has internet and computer, she will figure out everything herself because she has brains. And I was like, what if she hasn't done so yet? I mean, people who are able to think critically know how to fight propaganda and know how to differentiate lies from the truth. Obviously, this war has become so hybrid that it's really difficult to differentiate it. I'm not saying I can always tell what's true, what's a lie, but generally saying the computer and the availability of internet doesn't really help.
Really doesn't help. And I mean, I noticed it a lot from a lot of Russian teachers. I mean, I used to go to Russia a lot and got to know a lot of Russian teachers, and it was really shocking for me, a lot of the comments that I would get from people about, it was interesting because a lot of it was to do with the kind of undermining of any faith in the ability to believe anything. And it was almost like, I know my own government's feeding me bullshit, but I don't know which bits are bullshit and which bits aren't. And because my government's feeding me bullshit, it probably means everyone everywhere is getting bullshit. And who the hell knows what's real anyway? And you'd see this a lot, these kind of comments about, how can we know what's true? You've got your propaganda, we've got our propaganda. The same kind of lines churned out again and again. And a lot of it wasn't even necessarily with believing what you're told there. It's just to do with, how can anyone know what's true? And I mean, it's an interest, but that there are things you can do to check whether things are true or not. I mean, someone, Tanya said there, propaganda is propaganda, and it is hard to resist, and we are all subject to it in different ways. But I think, it's depressing how many people who speak good English and have access to the internet and have traveled and are teachers and have done critical thinking courses, still completely unable to understand what's happening with the information war that they're being subjected to. And I think you're right to say it is part of the war. It's part of the war.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what also is true is that we tend to believe something that we like better. Yeah, so if you don't like some person's opinion, because you don't want to believe that, even if it's true, you're probably not going to believe it. So because you don't like it, you don't like what you hear. So of course it's difficult to accept that your country is evil.
I love that Timothy Snyder quote about if you hate gays, they'll tell you that you're fighting gays, and if you hate, they'll tell you that you're fighting Nazis.
Exactly.
Like at some point, you have to kind of think, wait a minute, we're fighting gays and Nazis. It's an unusual combination of enemy.
But this is true. That's how nuts it gets. I'm sorry.
No,
this is how mental it gets. Yeah. I used to have, well, actually, the friend that I used to live with in London, I've known her since 1999. She is originally from, I wasn't planning to talk about her, but just to show you an example, she's originally from Eritrea and she was running away from the war. We'd been friends since 1999. So she's come to Ukraine. She's been here. She knows my family. She knows me. We've been in touch all these years. But then something happened with the propaganda and everything she started. She was totally against Ukraine at some point, and I really had to block her out everywhere. I couldn't believe it. I said, like, couldn't you just ask me? Don't you trust my opinion? Do you believe the newspapers, the internet? It was really amazing. You know, I don't have anyone living, you know, any relatives or friends living in Russia, so I don't know what to compare to. And thanks goodness I didn't have any quarrels on you know, regarding that. We have a couple of friends who'd escaped that country more than 10 years ago, I think, and they live abroad now, and they did send us the words of support because they understand what's going on. But that's thanks to the fact that they haven't been living, you know, in that country. They haven't been fed all this propaganda. I also have an old friend of mine. We used to work in London together, but originally she's not from Russia. I think she's from Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan. I can't remember exactly. So we now speak English with her, and she was the only person who ever sent me support words. And she said, Tanya, I'm sorry, although I'm not Russian, but I'm really sorry for what this country is doing to you. I was like, you know, this is the kind of support you really, really appreciate. And you know, you'll get from others, but not from that particular neighbor.
Well, you mentioned Eritrea, because I mean, I've taught a lot of Eritreans over the years, and the government in Eritrea is horrific. And they have compulsory military service for 10 years for everyone from 18 to 60. And so guys are shipped off to the desert to build these bloody mansions for, you know, military dictators. And loads of Eritreans leave if they can. And at the same time, the government is one of the few countries, along with, like, you know, Belarus, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, who consistently vote on the sides of Russia. And I know that Russia's kind of propaganda mission in the global south is very strong at the moment.
Yeah, the thing is, she'd been telling the exact same thing 20 years ago. She was so absolutely against politics. She knew the government was corrupt and everything. So she was like really, really understanding things. And then something clicked, you know, so.
But I have friends here who are on the kind of hard left, I guess, and they've also clearly absorbed a lot of Russian propaganda without realizing that's what they're doing. So lots of people who are kind of, you know, and it's how clever propaganda is. It's people who have been worried about US and UK imperialism, who were very damaged by the Iraq war, who, you know, like me, who were really angry about the fact that our country was involved in the Iraq war, who thought Iraq was wrong, who thought we shouldn't be supporting what's happening in Gaza, this kind of thing. And a lot of those people are also very susceptible to that kind of, well, NATO made this happen kind of argument, you know. And so I see it in people I know here who've never been to Ukraine, into Russia, don't know anything really region or the history or the imperialism or any of that, but they'll come out with these lines about, you know, the two sides are as bad as each other. What about the Ukrainian Nazis? What about NATO expansion? And it's like, seriously, you're going to tell me this stuff? It's like, you know, I expect this from someone on Channel 1 in Russia. I don't expect it from people I've known 20 years in England. And you just realize how clever they are at seeding those kind of things into the information kind of ecosystem, you know?
That's true. Yeah.
So can I ask you about 2014? What were your memories and your experiences of 2014?
Well, I had a 2-year-old daughter on my hands then. My eldest one was a little bit older than that, so it was pretty much scary then. I did have my bags packed, the emergency bags with the medicine and some basic clothes for the kids, and I've kept them in my closet for several years, unpacking them because the kids grew out of stuff and the medicines got expired, so I was changing it. Seriously, like I was physically ready to leave, should anything happen. But sorry?
Like at the drop of a hat, just whenever.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was, we were prepared because I've learned history well. And my husband obviously was among those who went as a volunteer, not a volunteer, but they went to check in the military points, but he was never called. So he started, preparing on his own with, he joined some like volunteer corps. And other than that, we just kept on working, trying to help. I did a lot of volunteer work when it comes to helping out the internally displaced persons. So yeah, as much as I could with the baby on my hands.
Oh, I'm interested. I think you're the first person I've spoken to who has said that literally from 2014 were prepared to pack your bag and go.
I had them packed. Yeah, I had them packed.
Curious as to how did you know that? Why were you more prepared than a lot of people I've spoken to?
I learned history. I learned the proper history without the propaganda and without everything that we'd been fed during the Soviet times. And how that happened, actually, London helped me. As funny as it may sound, when I moved there, and the first year and a half, I lived at in a hostel within the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. And downstairs, they have a pub over there. And to that pub, they used to have guests coming, and there were some elderly guys. And as I had learned later, that these guys were the representatives of one of the military units who, instead of going back to the Soviet Union, where they would definitely be killed or tortured and then killed or sent to Siberia, I don't know exactly how that happened, but they surrendered to the NATO forces. Some of them got to the States, some of them, and those who were present in London, obviously got to the UK. So after 2 years of being in a camp in the UK, they were given, as far as I understand, they were given the documents so they could stay and live there as refugees. And obviously, while the Soviet Union lasted, without an ability to go back home to their families and to their hometowns. Well, this is a mistake that I will remember forever. I was obviously, at school, we were still, well, the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. I graduated in 96. So it was just the dawn of our history being taught in the right way at our schools. Obviously, we were given more open information with less propaganda, but still it wasn't as good as it is now and as you can get the information now. So I had a misfortune to congratulate these guys on the victory day in the Second World War on the 9th of May. This pub. This was such a stupid thing of me to do. I really didn't realize that the 9th of May was a day of another occupation of Ukraine by the Russian army, because we physically got rid of one occupant and then the entire country was swept by another. So it was like a second occupation. They got really offended with me, and their main guy took me to his office upstairs, and we had a chat for of about 4 hours long. He was telling me his life, starting from around 16, 17 years old, when they graduated from schools. They wanted to live their lives, thinking of, universities, but they had to, carry the guns and stand up against first the Soviets, the Polish as well, because they were, dividing us as well, the Western Ukraine especially, and then against the Nazis. So they were fighting against everyone without actual financial support from anywhere, but just the support of the local people, of the villagers, the peasants and all. So he was, all my understanding of history just turned upside down. I started be more interested in Ukrainian history and searching for different sources where to find the proper history, not the propaganda that we'd always been fed. And this is how I knew that a bigger war is definitely coming, because this is an existential war for us. They will not be able to have us just exist, because we are the living proof, we are the living witness of the lies that had been on for centuries, of their name that was stolen from us. There used to be a Rus. That is not, there was never a Kievan Rus, it was just one Rus. They gave the name of Kievan and Moscow Rus. There was never a Moscow Rus, there was one Rus. They didn't even exist then. So the name, then the history was taken away and the documents were forged. Then art, culture, a lot of things, and it's still happening. So we are the living proof that they are a fake, in many things country. So it's either them or us, or they will have us as a submissive, little Russia, as they used to call us before. So we have to survive. As what's her name, Golda Meir, one of the first prime ministers of Israel, who was actually born in Kiev, she once said that our enemy wants us dead. That leaves us with no compromise, does it?
I mean, the remarkable thing I think about what Russia's doing is, if you listen to the people involved, like you listen to Medvedev, or you listen to Lavrov or whatever, they're very, very open about what they're doing. They're
Exactly.
that we're going to kill them until they accept us.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
but nobody listen. Yeah, everybody thinks, no, they probably don't mean that. Like, oh, we should be more careful with them. Oh, we should move a little. But this is not going to happen. Once they bite your hand, they will bite you, half of your body. Well, our body. So.
Well, and they're making it clear that that's the starters, not the main course as well.
Exactly.
I mean,
But that's the thing, they only understand the language of force, unfortunately. It's like with, this, I don't know, the bandits that meet you up at the dark corner of the street, and they seem kind of, scary. But if you hit back, that's where they will step away. But if you don't, they will continue accepting your, I don't know, being kind or being, I don't know, nice to them as your vulnerability. So they will think of you as not a strong person or a country to defend yourself.
There was a wonderful viral video here a few years ago, up the road from me. Someone had filmed it, of a guy it was on, and this guy had dressed up in, that movie Scream, where you have that kind of black face. This guy had dressed up like this, and he was jumping out on people and going, "Whoa!" and scaring them and filming their reaction, kind of laughing. And he picked the wrong guy, because this big guy came around the corner who looked like he'd been in the gym, and this guy out on him, and the guy just immediately went poof, like, the guy out, and the guy's like, "Fucking hell, what'd you do that for, mate?" And the big guy was just saying, "Mate, don't jump out on people and scare them, because this is what you get." And it's like, I think it went viral because, like, well, fuck around and find out.
Yeah, but he stopped him, right?
Yeah.
This what was meant to be, well, unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet, hopefully.
So, to talk me through your experience of February 24th, 2022.
Well, yes, it wasn't the first sleepless nights that we had, because, as I mentioned, we were expecting things on the 16th, but then actually a lot of people were texting, oh, like, I didn't sleep, but I slept through that night. But the 26th or the 24th, it was, I remember the feeling when we heard the bombs falling, and we jumped off the bed that we have to grab the girls and do something. And then it was around, really early in the morning, and then when I looked out at the window, we have a couple of roads and crossings that we can see really clearly. Everything was packed, so I knew I couldn't drive. Then we thought about everything. I still cannot believe this. We thought about everything: food, drink, some dry food, medicines, clothes, documents. We didn't think of the petrol. I don't know why.
Fatal flaw in
Um, I'm telling you guys, remember about the petrol, really do, just in case, yeah? I mean, God forbid from this, from you needing to use this, but just in case, petrol is vital. One, my husband then had his car, his work car, which he actually later gave away to one of the divisions that are fighting in the east. And his gas tank was half full, and in the car I was supposed to be driving, it was full, but it wasn't enough if we decided to drive to the Western Ukraine to my parents. Then we realized that if we drive together, then he'd need to go back somehow, so he wouldn't have enough. And then on the other thing, we were thinking that they would close Kiev, and he would not be able to get in because he wanted to go fight further on. So then when we heard that the highway that I was meant to be using was being shot through, and lots of cars were shot by the Russians, I knew that I obviously couldn't drive there, and definitely not on my own. Then the locals, the channels were saying that the locals are taking off the signs with the names of villages and cities so that the Russians don't know their whereabouts. And then I realized if there is no internet on the way and no road signs, who knows where I'm going to drive into. Yeah. So I knew, okay, the driving isn't good enough. Then we'd spent around 4 or 5 days and nights in the cellar. It's like an underground parking lot under our house, but it's not really deep. And the problem is that my eldest daughter was just like a couple of weeks from the surgery. So it was really horrible for her to sleep on the cement floor. And I knew that I really cannot keep the girls like this all the time. So we thought, okay, what should we do? I'm opening up the railway company, the timetable, thinking, okay, what we could do, where could we go? And at this moment, a friend of mine is calling, and she just lives a couple of blocks away from us. And she goes, "Tanya, train?" I said, "Yes, let's go." So it was like a matter of a couple of moments decision. And she said, "Okay, but I need you guys to pick me up because she's driving alone with her son, her daughter, her dog, and her 80-year-old mum who has dementia." So she said, "I'm physically really afraid of going out of driving out on my own." So when we wanted to drive out of our yard, we have like on the driveway, there was a dead body lying. We heard the shots at night, the night before. These were the groups of I don't know what they're even called in Ukrainian, some like internal agents, sleeping agents who were, I don't know, maybe weeks or months before he, sent to Kiev, and they were just sleeping agents kind of thing. So they were trying to put the bombs inside of buildings and, cause the chaos and help the... Huh?
sleeper cells.
I guess so, yeah. So somebody was shot, and his body was just lying right on our drive-through. So, and like we were trying to call the like police and all, and like they couldn't come because they were too busy fighting these agents. And they said, "Don't touch him because he could be filled with bombs," because that's what they were doing as well. So thanks goodness, we have another drive-through, but it had to be deblocked. So we picked up our friend and we drove to the train station, and it was crowded. But the thing is, nobody was pushing. Everybody was really kind to each other. So this is something, there was panic in the eyes, but there was kindness in the
Funny,
actions. And
a friend of mine, he's an Italian guy who now lives in Germany, and he's married to a Ukrainian. He lived in Kiev for 10 years, and they were in Kiev over Christmas, and he was writing about it on Facebook, and he said, the first thing I noticed is people are much kinder than they were before. Like, and he said the same thing, like, no one's really pushing you, or, like, it's strange how extreme circumstances sometimes bring out the best in people.
the thing is, Ukrainians to me are like a big, I don't know, a home of ants. We look chaotic, but when it comes to business or a danger, we really like every little ant know his or her business. We know what to do, and like somehow things just work, and it's amazing. And this feeling of unity, this is something I'm really, I don't know, praying for, wishing for, reminding all of us that we should really get back to it, this sense of you know, how united we all were during the first months of the big invasion. I note when we were at the station, I noticed that the policemen are letting women with children through to the trains. So I started asking others to let us through because we're with the kids, and everybody, they were letting us through. This was unbelievable. You know, there wasn't, you know, they weren't shouting like, "Oh, we want to get there too." No, 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 really. Like, so we got through. My husband put us on the train. Obviously, it was packed. There were like 9 people in our compartment, with a cat and a dog, and 12 in my friends. So we were all like packed and sitting, but at least it was, you know, warm and, you know, sitting. So we got to Lviv overnight in the bombings as well, so that was pretty scary. But thanks goodness we had another little girl in the compartment. So my youngest had you know, a new friend. So this was, you know, deal done. They chatted away till, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Then we spent the night in Lviv because of the curfew. We couldn't leave anywhere. But it was packed with volunteers. They were offering food, hot food, sandwiches, some sweets, hot drinks to everyone. They were trying to solve, you know, whoever was planning to stay in Lviv, they were trying to find the some, you know, temporary solutions where to stay overnight or for longer period of time, so, you know, flats. So I'm telling you, people were the kindest. And then because my sister from her hometown traveled to Poland, she called me, she said, "Tanya, you must go to Poland, I'll pick you up there." So I found another bus. We went through the border. We were really lucky because I think everybody was saying that the queue is at least 24 hours long, and we just passed really, really quickly. Like, we left at 10:30 in the morning, and then by 5 we were already in Poland. Yeah, so I think we were just really lucky there. And then she picked us up in a couple of hours. I remember, you know, holding with her for 10 minutes at the train station. We just couldn't let go of each other. So she took us to a place where our common friends rented a house not far from the Polish border. And we calculated there were like 25 persons of like all of other families who were trying to escape. So we spent a couple of nights over there, and then we traveled to Berlin, where my sister's eldest son lives and studies. And from then we arranged, because I had loads of invitations from my old colleagues or friends from all over Europe, even in Canada, like, "Guys, if you need a place to stay, you're welcome." So, you know, I've lived abroad. I've worked with you know, in a Dutch bank, so I got loads of invitations. I'm really grateful to everyone who offered and keeps offering their help. It's amazing. So we decided we would go to Portugal. One of the reasons I was thinking that if the war goes far beyond Ukraine, I was thinking Second World War, you know, scale and more. So I remembered that Portugal was one of the few countries in Europe that wasn't touched by the actual fights. And then I thought, if it spreads further, it's quite, you know, the closest, the I don't know, spot to travel to Canada, or, you know, to another continent from Europe. So I was that historically aware. Yeah. Obviously we stayed there for 3 months, but because it was the south of Portugal, it was a place where it's really difficult to find any residential place. It's really expensive. Yeah, I couldn't afford it, obviously, like 3,000 or 4,000 euros per month. Yeah, telling you. Well, yeah, if it's a nice place. Obviously, there was something like for 600 or 700 euros, but not, you know, the conditions are really, really bad. So it's not a place that I could you know, have my children live in, you know, with.
Were you teaching all of this time as
Yeah.
well, Tanya?
1.5 weeks into our arrival in Portugal, we arrived on the 5th of March, I think. And then from around 12ish or something, I went back to teaching because students were asking for lessons and people were asking for speaking clubs because we really needed to go out of this shock state, and we really needed communication. So yes, I started teaching again pretty quickly, because we all needed support from each other. So it really felt great that I was also be able to earn something, because it was really scary in terms of I couldn't relax because I was alone in a foreign country with 2 kids on my hands.
Yeah.
So you really, this pressure of you not knowing, if something happens to you, what happens to your kids then?
Yeah.
So this was like the worst thought, yeah, that I was having. But yeah, I went back to teaching straight away. And then 3 months after, we traveled to Vilnius, physically closer to Ukraine, which was emotionally, mentally really helpful. And then close.
Of having to deal with the Russians as well in Lithuania, yeah.
We actually, my youngest daughter, my both girls speak English really well. One of the reasons, by the way, especially with the youngest one, is that at some point I said, like, if you want to watch a cartoon or a film and there is no Ukrainian dubbing, which we didn't have much of 10 years ago, I said, if you want to watch it, no Russian language at home is allowed. You can watch it in the original. And there we go. She watches, I don't know, Australian series, the Friends, she knows them by heart. She teaches me things now.
And
she
have you basically stopped using Russian completely now?
I've never used it. I'm from a Ukrainian speaking family. I haven't used it. My husband, he's from Kyiv, and he was always like, whichever language you speak to him, he answers in that language. So if you spoke in Russian to him, he would answer you back in Russian. But he has Cossack ancestors, and this is in his blood. And once his first letter to me was in Russian, and I responded to him in Ukrainian, and he never ever spoke Russian to me again. So obviously it's because, or thanks to me, that our kids speak Ukrainian. His parents speak Ukrainian to us, with us. And so yeah, we are the very this is actually a daily fight for me, to grow up Ukrainian speaking kids in Kyiv, because it was always a challenge for me to find any extra activities, musical school, or dances or sports activities that I would want teachers to speak Ukrainian with them, but they would say, oh, like, if the group asks for Russian, then we would speak Russian. So it was always a fight for me. I am to blame a lot for many people to have switched from Russian to Ukrainian in Kyiv. So yes, I have this some little something, achievement that I'm really proud of. A lot of people keep telling me that, Tanya, thanks to you, we start speaking Ukrainian. So you really have to have this core inside, and you really shouldn't change it. Like, if it's your belief, just don't change. If I always give advice to people who want to start change from Russian to Ukrainian, don't be afraid to say. I keep telling them, you can practice with me. I will not be judging you for your mistakes. So I'm always supporting you, because this is something that we really need to do, because it's also, our existential fight. The language is something that identifies you abroad, for example, as a nation. Even my youngest one, when she heard in Lithuania, when she heard someone speak Russian, she goes, Mommy, were these Ukrainians or were these Russians? I said, probably Russians, because they spoke Ukrainian. How else can I notice from like a second's, a conversation, the accent? I could hear the accent if I heard them, speak for a longer period of time. But how can I?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Or Belarusians, because there's a lot of them in. But how else can I identify them? If you speak that language, then it must be your country.
So have you felt kind of changes in your teaching in terms of content or the way you work, or what happens in your classrooms over the last 2 years?
I feel that both me and people appreciate the moment much, much more. So in this sense, obviously this situation has always been there. So we never know what's going to happen the next moment, right? But we tend not to think about that. But now it's more vivid. So we all appreciate what we have, and it's more, I don't know, emotional.
Yeah.
Positively emotional,
Yeah.
and we get a lot of positive feedback from each other and from communicating with each other. So yeah.
Are you working only with Ukrainian students that you're teaching, or
If private lessons, majorly yes, but when I have a course, I do have international students too.
okay,
Yeah.
And I want to go back to something you said about the early months of the full-scale invasion, where there was a real sense of unity and wanting to get back to that, because you feel that there's a sort of a fatigue, or what's the feeling at the moment for you that you notice where you are? How are people feeling? Because I mean, it looks clear from the outside that it's going to be a long war, and it's going to be a long war with ups and downs, and it's going to be something which takes a kind of appalling toll on Ukraine. And we're talking about having to mobilize hundreds of thousands of more people. And, you know, you're looking at a country almost having to decide who dies to defend the country. I wonder how does that feel where you are, and among the people that you're with, and what's the kind of general mood?
I love my bubble because it's quite smart, and sometimes it's scary to go out of it. The truth is that this war has been on for. Oh, we have an air raid siren now.
If you need to go,
my curtains are done. I'm
need to go at any
and
point, Tanya, go. I don't,
no, I'm not gonna go. No, don't worry. The kids are also in a safe place, so thank you. This war has been on for centuries. So if you know history well, you know that it was meant to be, and it has to end, and it will end in our favor, because the good wins over the evil. I know it is already happening at a large cost for us, and my personal concern is that our authorities really would need to start acting and thinking for the country, and you know, not to break things down from within. So this is my first concern. Yes, obviously the best people die on the Ukrainian side, but we have no other choice. If we give in, or if we stop mobilization, we will die anyway. So there is really no choice. We cannot be tired of this, because every time somebody thinks this, I tell, look at the guy in the trench. Is he tired? Can he be tired? He has no other choice. If he gets tired, we will die. So we really have to, get up, pick up our asses, work hard, pay the taxes so that our money is used for the right cause. Go and donate, make a donation, support whoever you can. If you don't want to pay for the weapon, go to your doctor, and ask what's needed on the side of medicine or medical help to those who had been replaced internally, and so on. So you can do anything. My mom has been knitting clothes for the soldiers since 2014. I know other friends' mums have been cooking, and they've come up with great recipes of dry borscht and dry other stuff. Seriously, this is amazing, what people invent. So don't sit, do something, because every little counts. You really can be part of that, something greater, and your action will really, really count. Even if it feels that it's something small, a coffee, instead of a coffee, donate this money, and it will save somebody's life tomorrow. Yeah. So
been one of the things for me that's made me feel less helpless from a distance is doing things like this and taking part in trying to sort of be part of the information struggle, but also just donating and doing things. I mean, the trip I'm doing to Lviv next month.
I am going to be there, by the way.
I'll see you there.
Yes.
You know,
I couldn't have missed it. Come on.
we sort of agreed when we were going to do it that I don't want to do it in any kind of profit-making way. I want to do it as a way of being able for everyone to sort of know that you're getting some professional development and we're giving money.
This is amazing, and your informational support really means a lot, trust me. This is another thing, you know, about this, another project. I'm not going to be keeping quiet. I'm planning another project that will hopefully spread the word about Ukrainian culture and art around the world. Well, hopefully.
I mean, keep us informed about that.
Yes, I will. I surely will. I already have people working on the text. Then we will be translating them into English, and then I will make a couple of initial programs. So hopefully it'll work out.
I have two final questions, Tanya, before I have to go and see my family eat something. Before looking at me to stop talking. I guess the first question is, from the sound of it, I think I'd probably know the answer, but do you or your husband or any of your families, do you still have any relatives on the other side of the border?
No. Well, I remember my mom used to tell me that she had one of her cousins, distant relatives or something, who had moved out, but I haven't heard about that person like for more than 20 years or so. No, I didn't have anyone to even speak to about this, so I'm good.
And I guess my last question would be just, it may seem like a stupid question under the current circumstances, but how are you feeling about the weeks and months to come?
I am, as I mentioned.
I mean, you said in your bio, like, I'm the most optimistic.
I'm telling, yes.
Where does this come from, this optimism?
From within. I really don't know. I heard somebody's recent thoughts on this, that a pessimist is the person who has not enough energy, and an optimist is the person who has an excess of energy. Maybe I have an excess of energy in my life. I don't know. But I really look into it as, come on, we were given this life for a reason, and we live. If we are given the chance to live, it means we need to do something. We have a task maybe on this earth, and if we still keep on living, it means maybe the task hasn't been completed yet. So while we last, use as much chance as you can to make the best out of it. So if you're working as a teacher, teach. If you're earning money, earn money, pay taxes, create a project that will help your closest ones, or somebody you know, or on a bigger scale, your country. Excellent. So do as much as you can to support, and for us to win in this battle, because I really love this saying. This is an approximate quote by Dante in the Divine Comedy. The hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in a period of a moral crisis, maintain their neutrality. So even if you don't do anything, even if you don't say anything, it means you pick the wrong side. You stand on the side of the evil. So even if you're in the circumstances where you can't speak up openly about things, and show your support, do something quietly. I know there are a lot of donations, for example, from the occupied territories. The people are waiting for us there, so it's really important. Think what helps me. If I feel low, obviously I'm not always, all energetic and positive and, smiling. I think of somebody whose life has been a more test than mine, somebody who's living through more horrible times than I am. And then I think, oh my, what was it, Oscar Wilde who was saying? Or was it Erich Maria Remarque who was saying, come to the oncology department at my hospital and have a chat with the people who are... No, then it must have been Erich Maria Remarque. Sorry, I can't remember. He was saying, like, are you feeling low? Are you feeling down? Come to the oncology department at my hospital and speak with those people and have a look, and then feel better. Use the moment while you live. What else are we here for?
Tanya, I'm going to do a halt there, I think. Thank you so much for your time and for your boundless energy.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor, and I really hope to see you in Lviv soon.
Say hello, and look after yourself and your loved ones, and Slava.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was nice chatting to you. Bye. Thank you. Bye.